everyone. Thank you for joining us. The Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for Evergreen School Board. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor, and I'll let the other board members introduce themselves.
My name is Will Campbell. I'm the editor.
I'm Craig Brown, a member of the editorial board.
I'm Colleen Keller. I'm the assistant news editor of the Columbian.
And Ben Campbell, publisher.
And we'll, Brianna?
I'm Brianna Marshall, the education reporter.
And so she won't be asking questions in this form, but may want to talk to you later and maybe writing a story about this. And final piece of housekeeping, we are recording this. We will post it unedited on our website and YouTube channel. And with that, we'll get to the candidates. Take 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourselves, explain why you were running, and then we'll get on to specific policy questions. And we'll start with Julie.
All right. Thank you very much for having me today. My name is Julie Bocanegra. I'm currently the Evergreen Public Schools Position 1 Board of Directors. I was appointed in 2012, re-elected in 2013, re-elected 2017 and 2021. Decided to give it another go because I love public education. Public education means a lot to me. Just thinking about my own experience within public education, my son's experience, my family, the people that I've been around. It provides opportunities and pathways for our students to either have a career, be college ready. And I want every student to feel like they have hope, that they have a place in our community, that they belong. And that's what I'm really about, is just ensuring that we provide opportunities of engagement to keep our kids in school, to keep them learning, and that they have a pathway post public education, whatever that looks like, so they can be a successful member of our community and continue to thrive.
Great, thank you, Jacob.
Hi, I'm Jacob Smith. I'm actually not a first-time candidate. I ran for a freeholder back in 2013. I got 5% of the votes in my district. I'm running for Evergreen School Board because I feel our brand needs to be rehabbed. We've had relations with strikes over the last few years. We've had 3 strikes since 2018. We just had a strike recently that delayed school by a few weeks. We need to look at why we're making questionable cuts. We don't have librarians in our school. Heritage is really solid on the DECA side of things. We don't have a retail student store for them or any of our schools. And even though we have an advisor of the year for both DECA and FBLA, Heritage is also very solid in FBLA, and I want to get a little bit more support for them. Try to steer the conversation to the board like, hey, we need to help our career and technical service organizations, because I went through DEC and FBLA Heritage, and it inspired me to go back to school, try to teach, and go work in the classroom. And I even got to go to Orlando for the national conference to judge for DECA. And I just feel like, we've had incidents with weapons and knives, and it's just disheartening to read about it too. And I'm like, what's going on? And originally I was going to do this and the Charter Review Commission, but it's taxing to do 2 races at once. So I said, where can I make more of an impact? Is it the board or the Charter Review? Because I can steer the board in directions like, hey, I have these ideas. Let's bring these to the table. I'm trying to bring international baccalaureate to our school, bring Abbott back. I'd like to get a little bit more support for our DEC and FBLA programs because Heritage is very solid. They have solid advisors. Our district has had state officers for almost the last decade for FBLA.
Great, thank you. And thanks again to both of you for joining us. Let's start out with Julie. I want to touch upon something Jacob mentioned. There was a recent strike that delayed the start of school. There have been several strikes in the district by different unions in recent years. Specifically this year, what role does the school board play in helping to prevent those, and then in dealing with the strike when it does occur? And then what can the board do to prevent such a situation?
Well, strikes have, and I have experienced 3 strikes in my tenure as a school board director. And really the start of them was when the McCleary decision started at the state, because the state made a promise to fund public education as they're required to do. And there was a state salary schedule that everybody adhered to, and then bargaining teams had the right to go out and bargain their own salary schedules. And so that was kind of what we saw in 2018, because I think it was the first negotiations after the McCleary decision came through. And so that was really the start of it. 2023 was similar to that one as well. And then this last one was the PSC, or the large group. So it included paraeducators, bus drivers, mechanics, service workers, secretarial. So it was a support staff. And, you know, the cost of living is really, everybody feels it. Inflation is up, prices are up, school districts are feeling it. And the state has lessened their promise to public education from where they were after the McCleary decision at 50% total funding. And now I think we're down to 42%. So that 8% difference makes a huge difference in what we can continue to pay our staff. Now, they give us IPD for all of our staff members' raises. We want to do better for that because we know what it takes to support yourselves and have a good quality of living. So we wanted, you know, it was always the idea to give more than what the IPD was offering. I think if you looked at our proposals all throughout the entire strike, we were over 12.5% over the 3 years for our paraeducators. There was different ranges for transportation and some of the other groups in there. But our intention was always to give more than what the state was passing through because we want to take really good care of our employees. We value every employee that works for us. So the board's role in it really is to set parameters because we have to look really closely at the budget. And as Mr. Smith mentioned, yeah, we've made some really tough budget cuts over the last several years, really to right size our district through enrollment. But part of it is we're really looking to make sure we have supports for students where we need it. Since COVID, students have come back to us with more and more challenges. So our staff has to be aligned with where our students need them the most. And a lot of that is to address some of the needs that our students have. That's where our cuts came through. But we have to balance a budget. We have to think about what's sustainable to pay our staff over time. And the board's role is really to balance the budget, set parameters, work with the district team to come to a resolution, and then in the end, ratify the contract.
And just to clarify, when you say you're now at 42%, is that for Evergreen District or is that state?
That's the state. That's how much of the state's budget is now going to public education, where it was 50% post McCleary.
Right, and
Yes.
that's the same number in Evergreen.
Well,
Or
I
is
mean,
it
it's just the statewide is what's going out to public education. I think there's different proportionates based on
Okay, that's
regionalization and different factors of how it's funded.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Jacob, how do you think the board approached the recent strike? What could have been done differently?
What should have been done differently? We had a comment at the table that said, you don't have the juice to strike. Another comment that was said, it was, this isn't Burger King. You can't have it your way. That has to stop. That needed to be curtailed. It's not acceptable for our lead negotiator to say that.
Now, does that come from the board or from the?
Our lead negotiator. It's not proper for her to say that, and it's not professional for our brand. When that gets out and gets leaked out to the media, Facebook, everything, it erodes trust in the community. We used to pass levies when I was at Heritage with 60+% of support. The last time we did that was 2016. I mean, we're hanging on a thread for levies, but I don't think our lead negotiator should be negotiating. If she's saying you don't have the juice to strike, she also took a supplemental contract. And that's not acceptable when Heritage doesn't have a retail student store. We don't have an AVID program at our school, which got cut in 2016. We don't even have international baccalaureate, which is what we need to bring to the table. And our bargaining team also collected $31,000 in bonuses. And that was not acceptable. And I said, if I get on this board, I want to introduce a motion that says the bargaining team shall not receive compensation if there is a strike.
Now, you mentioned several things that have been cut. To restore those programs, does that mean a tax increase? Where does the money come from?
I would have to go through a levy, but we tried to pass a levy with $2.12, about $1.92, $1.92. But when we're trying to pass a levy, we got rid of Mike Merlino. And then we also had legal issues with a staff member over at Covington. And so that is like the snowball that caused us to do the no vote on that levy. And that levy failed 57% to 42%. We hired John Boyd, and he's like, I'm going to rerun this levy. We're going to do $1.70, $1.70, $1.70. If we had passed the first levy around, that's $28 million we have on the table.
But when the levies don't pass, then where's the money come from to restore these programs?
Retirements. I floated the idea around that, because we have a lot of experienced members on our staff. One of the ideas is that if you are close to retirement, we will cover your health insurance, we'll cover your insurance until you retire or until you're eligible for Medicare or Medicaid. Because we have a lot of experienced staff, they're making $100,000+ and the high end's $130,000. And then our new teachers are 67,000. Probably the new contract's gonna be around 68,000. So we need to incentivize, try to get a more diverse crew, because Evergreen's gotten a lot diverse over the years. You know, we've had an increase in the Latino population. We also have a lot of increased diversity. I went and observed Heritage for a project for school, and lots of more diverse kids taking AP classes. Because when I was at Heritage, I was taking AP classes. We had predominantly white people or white students in our class, in our AP classes. We need to have diverse thoughts. So I would incentivize retirement. I would also amend the rule, because we have to have a 5% reserve. I would say knock it down to 4%, because in the state of New York, you can only have a 4% reserve for your school district budget. So going from 5 to 4, it's a little bit different, but it can cover things like librarians, which would be $3 million.
Great, thank you, Craig.
The Washington State Republican Party has been targeting school board races around the state of Washington. Evergreen is one of those where they are trying to recruit candidates to run against incumbent members. Is this one of those races? And also, what do you see as the advantages and disadvantages of the partisan political parties being involved in school board races?
I can answer that. No,
Okay.
sir, this is not a targeted race.
Okay.
I sat through the middle of filing week. I said, we need to get Heritage help for student store. We cannot have incidents with weapons. We need to get Heritage a little bit more help on the DEC and FBLA side of things. And I only serve 2 terms. That's my pledge, is this term, next term. And I just go out and advocate for stuff.
Okay, you are a Republican precinct committee officer.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir. So yeah, I can explain all that why I'm in that race.
sure.
So, like the last board we had was like kind of crummy. We had quorum busting. We had Dave Galotly as parliamentarian leave the stage and snatch a mic from a PCO, and that got on tape. And that also caused quorum to be busted. And then we also had Secretary Kelly Fiskin's minutes being held up for almost half a year. Our bylaws say the secretary meeting minutes shall be distributed within 7 days. We cannot be waiting 6 months for Kelly's meeting minutes to be approved. It's not acceptable. So I hopped in. I was like, I'm going to go through, clean house. That's what we did. We got rid of bad leadership, change the ship. That's what I want to do with Evergreen, like change things around, make it so we can rehab it. And so now I want to be a consultant where we can rehab stuff, where we can do things like, be more open on communication, be more open on what we say too, because it's not acceptable. Another reason why I'm in is because we had an LD chair flat out refused to have a meeting. 20th LD Republicans only had 1 meeting in 2 years. 1. And that's not acceptable to me. But yes, the WSRP is not targeting this race.
What about, okay, I appreciate that. And what do you think about the idea of political parties targeting school board races? Is that a good idea, a bad idea, neutral idea?
It's kind of neutral. I mean, I've tried to get Democrats and Republicans like on my side trying to build coalition.
Okay.
We've had 2 Democrat organizations say no recommendation in this race. The 18th and the 49th. The 18th said no recommendation for Evergreen. The 49th was a no to recommend somebody that's sitting in this room. And the CCRP said no to me, and they also said no to the other guy. So, I mean, because it's like, with certain issues like AVID, DECA, FBLA, respect for our paras, that's not partisan issues. And I'm trying to rehab this brand so that way, if it gets rehabbed, we can pass levies with about the 60% threshold that we had when I was at Heritage. Because the last levy, we're barely hanging on a thread. And why is the situation where we're past, instead of being 57, 64%, 51.5? What's going on here?
Okay, I appreciate that. Julie, what are your thoughts about political parties being involved in school board races?
I don't really think that there's a place for it. I feel like school board position is nonpartisan. My role as a school board member is to listen to the entire community. Our students are our main priority. center of the circle. Everything we do should revolve around our students and the opportunities that we're providing for them. Politics really doesn't have a place for that. It's nonpartisan. We have to listen to everybody. We have to come up with ideas, solutions that's best for every family, and then what's best for students.
Thank you.
Right, Colleen?
Getting back to the strike just for a minute, what is, for both of you, your position on, does the state need to crack down on its language regarding strikes by educators, people, like public employees? Or is the way that the system is handled right now okay? And Julie, let's start with you.
Well, I think that there is a law that public employees, it's unlawful for them to strike, which doesn't necessarily stop the action, but it is unlawful. But then it would take the organization then going and doing a court action to have it be stopped or say that it needs to be stopped because it's unlawful. I know that there's a law that's coming out in 2026 around unemployment for striking workers. So I'm not sure how that will play with public workers. That remains to be seen. I'm not sure if, because I also think, and I also believe in the employee's right to advocate for themselves and to unionize when they want to, increase their wages, have workers' rights. So there's kind of a fine line. I do think that most situations can be worked out at the table. If we would have because they could have worked throughout their contract, and really in the end, there was only a couple of more things that were agreed upon. We already had 35 tentative agreements settled on when the strike started, and there was only a few items left to iron out. And so my hope is that we continue to bargain in good faith. We come to a resolution. Both parties are willing to come to the table and work together.
So that you all, the school board voted to, get court order to force people back to
Yeah,
work if
We
necessary.
did vote for the resolution, correct?
Right,
Because we needed to start school. Our kids are a priority and they needed to start school.
right, and that's, I guess, maybe, what I'm wondering, the sort of the crux is, does the law need some more teeth in it, or is it toothy enough as it is now? I mean, you all, it took days to get to that point where,
Because yes, because I think we were trying to let the two teams work it out at the bargaining table.
Jake, what do you think about that?
I don't think the law is gonna change. Democrat governor, Democrat House, Democrat Senate. We have a Democrat trifecta in our state. To me, it is a toothless law. I can give you a really good example of a toothless law. When I was living in the state of Florida, it said couples that aren't married can't live together. So that's example of toothless law, but we're not gonna go after a couple that's not married because they're living together, and that law got repealed. But it's with the situation is that we try to get an injunction. They did that in 23, it failed. They try to do it this year, failed again, and it kind of burns trust with the community that you're trying to go back to work. We had almost 6 months to work on this contract, and they were willing to come in over the weekend for Labor Day. Their stipulation was, you will not be getting bargaining bonuses. You have to commit. Do not get bargaining bonuses. We will come in and negotiate over the weekend. They could not commit to that. And so because of that situation with the supplemental contracts, it's why trust is eroded with our board. But I don't think the law will change. I don't see Republicans taking the House, Senate, or the governorship anytime here in Washington. Law's just going to change, keep the same as is. We couldn't even pass financial literacy. We had 2 sessions to pass financial literacy for a graduation requirement. Can't even do that. We can't even do a bill about cell phone usage in school either.
But that was actually promoted by the state treasurer, who is a Democrat.
Yeah, but you can
The
also,
financial literacy.
you can, yeah, through that. Yeah, and financial literacy is very good. Did a little bit of accounting when I was at Eastern. Aspired to go back to school to help with DEC and FBLA. So
Well,
Jacob, do you have any kids?
no,
Do you think that if you had kids that were due to be in school with the strike ongoing, that you'd have any different perspectives on that?
Well, it's like it might be considering switching schools. There was somebody I went to Heritage with, and they were considering switching to another district. We also had a family that was in the process during the strike, leaving Evergreen and going to another district to get kids started in school. And it's like we have to be open about stuff. We cannot have snide comments at the table. We cannot have people saying stuff that's not professional and that erodes trust in the community. And I would feel a little bit different if I had kids, situation, but like we would go over lesson plans like, hey, let's work on some marketing homework. Let's work on accounting. Let's work on a subject that you're not really good at because, get that skill set ahead of the curve or read ahead of the schedule. I would do that a lot when I was at Clark, is that they'll say, oh, you're going to read this chapter, read these chapters. We'd read these chapters, go over it, make sure they understand it. So we would be doing a little bit of work at home because I want homework to be complete, free of plagiarism, because with plagiarism, if it comes back and I get a call that says my kid plagiarized something, it makes me look bad as a parent. And especially with AI tools and degree, or you can buy papers online, it's not a really good look if you plagiarize. It's easier to get help early on than it is being struggling down the road.
Ben?
Julie, how would you define student success beyond test scores and graduation rates?
That's a great question. Since 2020, it's probably no secret that some of our academics have declined, and it's really a focus of the board and the superintendent to actively work on improving our academics, especially around mathematics in elementary, reading in elementary, because we know that that's the success rate. There's been a lot over the years, I think, since they're, in education, right? The next best thing, and let's test, and people look at standardized testing as not the indicator. And we certainly don't look at that as the end all to someone's education, because some people don't take tests that great. We do individual assessments, and we do, obviously we take the standardized testing, but we also then look at our strategies around that to try to figure out where kids are at. So then we can meet them there and try to get them to improve. We've been pretty successful in the last several years in our school improvement plans of getting some small incremental increases throughout all of our grade levels and throughout all of our diversity in our learners. But I look at it as overall success. Are they attending school? Because attendance dropped after COVID, and we're looking at attendance. We can't teach them if they're not there. So we look at attendance, we look at engagement, we look at their sense of belonging. We do that through surveys. I look at it and how engaged are they in our extracurricular activities, athletics, what are they participating in? Mr. Smith brings up Heritage. My son actually went to Heritage. And so it's our neighborhood school. And I do want to clarify something. We have 31 extracurricular clubs and activities for students to participate in. That's important for me because I think if kids have a reason to go to school, that they'll come to school. It doesn't matter what you're involved in. If you're in chess club or drama or choir or basketball, it's something that makes you feel like you're connected to the school. And all of the programs are great. We've got great advisors. We've got great people that are leading them. And I know they've done a huge initiative through all of our schools about getting people participating in at least one thing, if not two. And especially shout out to the principal at Heritage, who's really gotten his students to participate in two things, which is amazing. And I also just want to clarify one other thing. The student store is active and running. So I'm not sure where Mr. Smith's getting this information about that. Right now, if you walk into the school today, because they have to get the students up and trained and running, but student store is actively open, and it has been for years.
And Jacob, how would you define student success?
For me, student success, you grow, you learn stuff, you go in and you learn more. Do I know more than I did the other day? Did I turn in an assignment on time? Am I learning something new when I first came into the classroom? Am I learning a new skill set? Am I improving on things? Like I was struggling as a freshman. Like I had less than a D average and had my PS3 taken away as a freshman. And then I go into senior year, I got a 3-point GPA both years senior year. That's success to me. You're improving from 0.8 going to 2 to almost 3 points. 3.0 GPA and graduated with about a C+. I had to work hard for that. And so learning a new skill set, being engaged in your community and learning a new skill set, like you go into a financial literacy class. I know nothing about financial literacy. At the end of the semester, they'll have foundations. They'll learn about credit cards, debit cards. They'll learn about credit scores, what it takes to buy a car, what it takes to buy a house, and trying something new as well. I did FBLA as a sophomore through senior year, picked up DECA as a junior, senior year for speech and debate. And so for a Heritage student store, that's called the Wolf Den Cafe. In the eyes of Washington DECA and DECA Inc., that's a food store. That's a food operations store. What I want to bring to Heritage is something where we can do t-shirts, we can do they learn cash handling skills, they sell Heritage merchandise, because we sell Heritage merchandise over at Walgreens, but it's not going to the community. If we sell it at Heritage, because Heritage is turning the corner in my viewpoint, football 3-0, lots of participation, and we're turning the corner. We haven't had any bad news stories from Heritage, but we're turning the corner, and then you buy into that community. It's like, this is a good feel-good story. But yes, improving your grades and learning your skill set, that's success to me. I got out of bed, met somebody that misses school. Even if they're absent, they show up to school. That's a victory for them. They're in the classroom learning. And so, I don't like standardized tests. It took me 3 years to go pass the math test. And I went up to the counselor and I said to the counselor at Heritage, can you have John Dieter change the rules? Because he was superintendent at the time. Change the rules so that way I can take accounting class so that way I can graduate. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to pass the math test. Because I'm already on book 2 as a junior in high school. And my peers are taking pre-calc, AP calc, stats, book 3, and I'm behind them. And I said, can you make accounting a required class that you can substitute for a math class? Because what happens is that if you don't pass a math test, you can do collection of evidence or alternative class. Accounting is not an alternative class. So I wanted the superintendent to change the rules so that way I could take accounting as a senior and graduate. But thankfully, we passed that math test.
Both of you mentioned the importance of just getting kids to school and attendance. But on top of that, enrollment has been dropping in Evergreen and throughout the country for public schools. What can public schools do to change that tide? Let's start with Julie.
Well, the first thing, we can make housing more affordable in our district. I think that's one of the main reasons why Evergreen has lost a lot of students post-COVID, when the mortgage rates dropped dramatically post-COVID and everybody was refinancing or selling to take advantage of those rates. What we found is we were getting we had a demographic come in and tell us what was going on with our population in our district. And what we found is that people were bidding on those houses, cash prices. So we saw lots of retired people from Oregon and California who could pay cash and buy those houses. And so they weren't families with students. So that was one of the reasons why we've lost students.
Now that impacts Evergreen.
Correct.
But nationally, the
Yeah.
percentage of public school students has dropped.
Yeah, I agree. I think that people are making some different choices. Homeschooling, I think after COVID, when they had their kids home for a year and a half, they just kept them at home. And I think a lot of people just made that decision for their families at that point. They had already gotten themselves into a routine and decided that that was the route that they were going to take. During COVID, there was a lot of state mandates, and I think that private schools maybe afforded some flexibilities that people decided it was a way to get their students in school before the public schools fully opened back up. And that may have been an option at that point, and then they kept their students there. I feel like public schools can do a much better job. And even in Evergreen, we just need to make sure that people understand that we have offerings, and actually we probably can offer more than what they can learn at home or in a private school setting because of all of our CTE and all of the courses that we can offer that you cannot get in the other settings. And so we just need to advertise that more so people really understand the options that are in public schools.
So besides the extracurricular activities, what if you were to try to convince someone with kids who was on the fence of going to a public school versus going to private, How would you
How
solve?
would I- Oh, that's easy to me because that's what I've said all along my whole life, that public schools are about putting people in classrooms with people who are not necessarily the same as them, or they have different values, different diversities. They come together and they have to figure out a way to coexist. And to me, that's life. And so if you start it in public education, that's what is the best start for everybody's kid, is to be in a classroom with people who don't always agree with them, don't always look the same, and they work together and find solutions.
Jacob, what do you think? How would you try to convince someone?
So try to go to public school, try to maybe introduce international baccalaureate. Columbia River High School uses a lot of boundary exceptions because of its IB program. I actually know somebody that picked River when they were moving from out of state to here. They picked River because of the international baccalaureate program. And I say, this might be a good conversation to for our board to have. Let's bring IB to our schools. Let's be open on, let's take a look about why our brand's not the brand it used to be. Are we being mirrored because of the strike? Is it because of how stuff's being handled? Is it because of disinformation? But we want students to become welcome. And yes, I agree with my opponent that housing prices, if we lower them, would help. The average house price in Heritage's area is $500,000. And no family's going to be able to afford a $500,000 house inside Heritage area. You go out to Camas, it's almost $1 million house. No young folks is going to go out and buy $1 million house. It's cash buyers. We have a lot of cash buyers moving to California because California is way more expensive living than Washington. Get a little bit more mild weather, rains, and that. They're not bringing their kids with them. And so whenever a house gets bought, they're going to go with the cash buyer because they can get the deal done and closed. But yeah, we need to make it where it's a little bit more attractive. Hey, we're going to bring IB. We're going to rehab this brand so that way in the eyes of the community, I want my kid to go through Evergreen schools. But I'm a little bit concerned about, and it's also, we've had students leave the district too. My niece is out of the district. She had 3 schools in 3 years. She's in 3rd grade. 3 schools in 4 years is not acceptable.
And now, in general, why is public school enrollment dropping, do you think, nationally?
The homeschool, private school,
How can public schools combat that?
just try to rehab the brand, try to sell them like, hey, we have this curriculum. So we have to beat them through curriculum. Like the private school is not going to have DECA. It's not going to have FBLA. We have to sell them through activities. We have to look at ideas like what can we offer that the private school does not have. Private schools cost money, but public school is free. And it's also, we accept those, and private schools can be very selective on who to pick for schools. So like states that have vouchers, they've had this issue before. If you're on, they can kick you out if they think you're problematic. And it loops back around, and then you're back into the public schools. And it's like, we have to like, hey, we're offering these classes, we're going to be more open on our brand, but we should do that. We should try to get a spokesperson to advocate for our public schools, say, hey, I went through here. It's not that bad, but it's like, don't give up on school, because if you fall behind, and that's what happened with COVID, is that we have folks that have done in-person learning and then you switch to online, and it's like, how do you do that in that situation? But yeah, we need to like rehab the brand, look at that, like try to sell them on activities, extracurriculars. I explore the idea of bringing international baccalaureate to our schools. And I don't think any of the private schools have international baccalaureate here. I doubt any of them have DECA, FBLA, or a solid sports teams.
And Julie, are there any IB programs in the Evergreen district?
No, but we have plenty of other things to offer.
Yeah, it's just for your specific point.
Yeah.
Jacob had mentioned security and safety as an issue in his opening statement. Julie, how would you assess security and safety in Evergreen schools, and what needs to be and should be done in that regard?
Schools are tricky, and that's another limitation on where the state is failing, and it's funding. We hire and have more security staff than what the state is allocating for budget. And so those are coming out of our levy dollars, which we did ask for the top dollar amount in the last levy that passed. So we are allocating at all of our schools at a higher level than what the states are funding. It's always a concern. I think we've got a really good system in place. We have our head of security of the district works really closely with local law enforcement. And so he has a beat and a pulse on what's happening. We have really a culture that we're trying to turn around. And if you see something, say something, because if you don't, then something could happen. And so we're really trying to promote that throughout our entire district. So students feel safe and comfortable coming to someone that they trust and reporting those issues. We need everybody to be vigilant. The worst thing I think in the world is for somebody not to feel safe coming to a school. And it kills me that we have issues throughout our country with school violence and school shootings. And we're gonna do everything that we can in Evergreen to prevent that. We have a big district. We got a lot of students. We have a lot of buildings. 37 buildings and 22,000 students. It's a lot to track on, but we're gonna do everything we can and to monitor and make sure that our kids stay safe.
So for security issues, it's like, I find it not acceptable that we've had, a gun turnout at Heritage. We had a kid get knifed at Heritage. Thankfully, they went okay. We found a gun in student Shahela's bag, a knife, shooting at Evergreen 2 years ago. That kind of opened my eyes and like
What could the school board do to reduce or prevent those incidents?
a few more, maybe a few more security guards. I don't want to do metal detectors. They don't work. I got screened at TSA supposedly, but metal detectors don't always work. More security, more security and like try to reach out to at-risk students. I went to the board. The first thing I said to our board, boys need positive male role models. And so we need to say, hey, don't bring weapons to school because it makes you look bad. Not only that, if you bring a weapon to school at Evergreen, you're kicked out for a year and you get charged. And we don't want somebody to go through the system and throw their life away because they're having frustrations. And I would open up maybe a few more counselors, we're going through a mental health crisis as well. And it's like, I'm bouncing back and forth, a few years ago, somebody that I was interested, I found out she got pregnant and it's like, I don't want to be around anymore. And it was just tough, like finding out about that. And I went through, got a counselor and I got help. But boys, you need to go to counseling and go get help because if you don't get help, the stuff is going to linger. And with these incident weapons, they're all boys. And, I've not heard of any, but a girl bringing a weapon to Evergreen schools, but we need positive male role models with football coaches, head of security. But yeah, I would have, bring in a few male security guards, be that positive role model, reach out to at-risk students because I don't want to read the paper that somebody else gets shot outside of Heritage. And I live down the road from Heritage. All they have to do is leave. My father lives out in Mountain View. We had incident with guns at Mountain View. And thankfully the cops responded to him because I talked to the teacher at the district and he thought a student was going to die because of the guns. And I originally thought school resource officers would be a good idea, but we're understaffed on that. But we need positive male role models, a few more security guards. Olympia needs to do its job and fully fund education. And our situation, I don't want to read that, reiterating the point, why are these boys bringing weapons to school? Are they trying to be accepted? Do they not feel accepted? I grew up not being accepted. It's like one of my goals, I'm going to try to get a homecoming court. I'm going to try to do this, try to do that. And I felt miserably all 4 years on that. And, you'll turn out okay. Just be a good citizen, but just get help if you need help. I've gone through counseling. There's a stigma for men getting counseling as well. And, my dad left me when I was a senior at high school. And that's why I sought Bob Berrigan. I sought, positive male role models at Heritage. Steve Massar, he's an English teacher. And it's like, because my dad, he walked out on my mom, or my mom kicked him out. And he wouldn't talk to us for 2 months. And then he says, I'm divorcing your mom.
It's terrible.
And-
I think that's enough though. I get the gist of what you're saying there. So I don't need to get.
A real quick to follow up on that school safety, one word answer.
Yeah.
Would you be in favor of teachers carrying guns in class?
No.
One of the issues that has been really nagging at public education for some time, stemming also from the clear decision, is funding for special education. Has there been some improvement in that over the past couple of years? And how would you, rate isn't the right word, but assess how Evergreen schools are handling special education. And Julie, let's start with you.
All right, great question. The state is lagging behind on funding for special education. We actually saw a little improvement last session, but the fact is they're still far behind. And we have identified more students that need services, which is more expensive, and the funding just has not kept up with the demand. Kind of back to one of the statements I made earlier about the budget and where we've had to make some really tough decisions around, and Mr. Smith mentioned librarians. Yeah, we did cut librarians, but we continue to have a higher level of security officers at our schools because this more than what the state's financing, more counselors than what the state is financing, and our special services has increased because of the more students that are identified as needing special services. And students came back from COVID with some behavior problems, and it was, probably that year and a half of not being socialized and not being in school with their peers put them behind. We're making some great strides in that area, but we do need help from the state legislation and increasing their funding or bringing it back to the levels that we were at statewide to help us sustain our programs, because it is very expensive. And that's really been one of the strains where we had to repurpose our staff and ensure that those students are getting the supports that they need.
Jake, what's your assessment on the special education?
I went through special education Silver Star. They diagnosed me with autism, so Asperger's at 18 or 18 months old. We were able to identify boys with autism or Asperger's early on compared to girls, because girls will apparently mask. But yeah, we need more support for special education. And what I was told is that our state caps special education spending, and that I heard that we lift the cap on that. And special education kids are human. They want to be accepted. They want to just be like their general ed peers. They want to be accepted. They want friends. They want somebody to affirm them. They might need special services, but that does not make them less human. And yeah, I feel like Olympia needs to help with special ed. We can't really fill paraeducator positions for Evergreen. And how are we going to help meet student needs if we can't fill para positions? If we can't get people through the door to help? And and it's like Olympia. It's just like Olympia's just like a jigsaw. It's like we can do this bill, but we can't do that bill. But they need to help with special ed because I feel like my niece might have ADHD. I feel like my nephew might have it too, and it makes me concerned that they're not getting the support that we need, that the kids need. It's like the kids need support. I had Miss Taylor and I had Jill through Silver Star. I was kind of more self-sustaining at Covington and Heritage, and it's like I had the compass, which was try to get homecoming core, try to go to DEC and FBLA nationals, bring Heritage to state championship, and that was kind of a compass that caused me to not get in trouble with school, try to get involved in extracurricular activities, try to do something positive for my community. And we also need to be empathetic towards kids with disabilities. And it's like, I've gotten name called. I've had a kid get hit and bullied at Covington, and it's just not acceptable, but we need to be more mindful. Another thing too, it's like
I'm sorry, I'll stop you there. Actually, we need to move on. How about give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any endorsements, and we'll start with Jacob.
I should be supportive for school board. We need to change the ship for Evergreen. Our brand needs to be rehabbed. Barely passing levies. We're making questionable moves. We do need to change the bargaining team for Evergreen. I will 100% support a change on that, because Vancouver, when they bargain, they do it more efficiently than Evergreen. They had a whole contract together for the 2018 strike. They put a whole together contract, and half the time it took Evergreen. So we do need to change the bargaining team. I'm going to try to get middle school FBLA up and running, try to get a little bit more support for our DECA program, get added back into our schools, try to rehab this brand so that in the eyes of the community, Evergreen is making positive changes it needs in order to get more support for levy, because we cannot be passing levies with 51.5%. I was going to try to pass a bond, but not in this environment, no. No, it's not gonna work. But yes, I should be voted in. I will only do 2 terms. I'll fight for Avid, fight for our CTSOs, rehab this brand, shape our district so it's more positive and it's more strategic response.
Great, thank you, Julie.
So I am proud of my service to the Evergreen School Board. I think that I have the experience, the perspective. I have the right temperament to continue to do the work and get along with everybody and listen to all the constituents in the district, really to make the best decisions for our students. We've made some really tough decisions and things have not, go perfectly, but I don't know that any organization ever is perfection. However, we take adversity and we find ways to continue to serve our students without taking away programs for our kids. We continue to find ways to offer more to them. And that's what I will continue to do, is to continue to find programs, ways to engage our students. We might have to shift some of our resources in order to do so, but it's important. It's important that our kids have a great experience in their public education and their K-12 experience with us. And so I will just continue doing what it takes to make sure that that continues to happen so our students are ready for what happens next after high school.
Great, thank you. Thanks to both of you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.